This is Revelation Response, a podcast where we talk about who God is, what He's done in our lives, and how we can't help but respond in worship. We want these episodes to be an encouragement wherever you are on your faith journey, to pay attention to what God is saying to you, and to consider how you might respond. Now, here's my conversation with Josh and Stephanie Arnold. Hey, well, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Nate Souza, your host, and I've got two really good friends today, the Arnolds, on the show. Welcome, you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for being here. So let's go orderly style. Introduce yourselves. Maybe Steph, we'll start with you. So,
okay.
I know you looked at Josh.
I know. I was like,
she's the oldest of the two.
Right.
Oh man.
Jumping straight in. So
by 6 weeks. So
maybe just kind of, I know that's really hard, like an overview of who you are, but maybe how long y'all been at the church and kind of how long you've been married, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So we've been married over 18 years. This summer, it will mark our 19th year together. Okay. So we were married at 19. So we've been together since we were like, he says 14, I say 15.
Okay,
there, somewhere around
there. The
there.
jury's out on
yeah.
the actual date. Okay.
We won't get into it right now, but yeah. So we've been together for a really long time.
Okay.
We met at church at youth group.
Awesome.
So he led worship, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to all that.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you been at fellowship? So that's where we obviously met, was at the church.
Yeah. So we moved December 2019. So
Okay.
I think we joined though January 2020 officially.
Yeah.
So
almost
right
4
before
years coming up on December or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And then Josh, what about you? Where'd you grow up and what was?
My dad was in the Army, so all over the place. And we were in Germany, and then, I was in choir my whole life because that was just what we did, pageants and choirs in Baptist churches. And so I was in every choir, every pageant you could possibly be a part of, and then moved to El Paso and was the only guy in the choir there.
I can see it now. The imagination.
I was sitting there, and Bernard was the other guy, but he was the choir director. And Steph was one of the 6 women.
I would say there was like under 10.
It was
7 people. Maybe.
Oh, interesting.
It was a dying crowd.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of, we moved there, and I got in the choir, and then kind of what sparked our relationship in some senses is Steph was actually on her way down the stairs after a performance and tripped.
Oh.
And obviously being the only guy, I laughed.
In front of
that was
the
the start of it.
It's where she recognized me. I recognized her.
How romantic.
Yeah, everything kind of
I was
bloomed.
Mortified. He was having a great time.
Oh my
it was
God.
amazing.
But I grew up with 3 sisters, and we teased and laughed at each other all the time. But that's kind of, again, military all over the place, but landed in El Paso, Texas before.
That's when you first noticed me.
Yeah.
Had you lived there for a while, Steph?
Yeah, I grew up in El Paso.
Oh, really?
So, I've been born and raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll get to a lot more of your individual stories and all that, So, for those listening, we met. So I'm the music director at the church, and y'all come in, and every so often we'll just get these amazing people that's just show up, and they're like, "Hey, we'll serve if you want us to." It's just and as soon as we met, it was the vibe was there, and the feeling of these are great people. This is the type of people we want on the team and everything. And so that's how we met. And I would call you guys rock stars, superstars. I know that's hard for volunteers. But people that always want to serve, people that just have a spirit of gentleness about it and humility. And so thanks, for
appreciate that,
just being great parts of the team and everything. And then I thought, when we do these episodes, I was like, okay, I want to get some of our volunteers in here to talk about what's it like to be on a team, what's been your experience with worship. And so thanks for being here today. Yeah. I don't know if it's better to go back and maybe talk about some of your story. I know you were a worship leader, Josh, at a church. I'd also like to know, Steph, how you even got into singing and what that was like for you, through church. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. You would have never expected me to ever be a singer in church because I was painfully shy, but it's just not something I would normally push myself to do. I can't even remember what brought me to it, but maybe just encouraging because I liked it. And so that's kind of where it started. I was on the worship team a little bit, but not as much as Josh. And I kind of shied away from it a little bit more. Choir was more my thing, where you can hide a little bit easier. But when we were married so young, we were married at 19. Our first station was Turkey. So he was in the Air Force.
Okay. So right away, like y'all got married. You're already in the Air Force, and you're like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Flew off to Turkey. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a whole different story of why he even ended up in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So, but we were in Turkey, and so naturally he had been leading at in high school.
Okay.
And so he, they needed a worship leader at the time, so he just kind of stepped up and did it.
Okay.
And he just encouraged me to do it, even though I was like, I'm okay not doing it. Like I enjoy singing, but I don't really want to be up there. But he was pretty persistent about it, and I'm so glad he was, because it's something that really, it's neat that we were in ministry together. We've been in ministry together for a really long time.
Yeah.
And it's not something that a lot of people can say they do together.
For
something.
sure. Yeah.
And so it's kind of special in that way. And then it allowed me, like, this gifting that God gave me, to blossom and grow. And
so would you all lead for the people at the base? Like that was the thing where they have chapel or like a
on base chapel. It was like a 6 p.m. service on a Sunday.
Okay.
It was the Protestant service is what they call it.
Okay. So you both lived there
on base.
On the base. Yeah. And then whoever wanted to go, they would come to these chapels, and you would be the worship.
There were like different type of, there was different types of services throughout the day. Catholic in the morning, and then right after Catholic, you had like the gospel service, which was about 4 hours time block.
Yeah. Just as long as it needs to be. Yeah.
And then you would kind of like have like an hour break, and then we would come in and do our practice rehearsal and then do our service.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. They got to accommodate to like all the different types of people that are on the base.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly.
So let's go to you a little bit, Josh. So when you were growing up, it's like, okay, I have an acoustic guitar, I can carry a tune. Sometimes I ask, like, some people have those skills but never lead worship. So like, what was it like for you? I mean, was it like the opportunity came up, or you were just dying to use your gifts, or like what was the thing?
So it's a family thing. Our whole family sings.
Okay.
Like there's 5 of us kids and my parents. And my dad has done a couple of like small time recording and stuff like that back in the day.
Gotcha.
So he's just super gifted. My mom is great at harmonies, and so we all just kind of picked up. We would do that like family song where we'd all sing on stage. It was
okay.
I just think back to it, and we were just all embarrassed.
Yeah, exactly.
It felt a little bit like that, but it was good because it just instilled in us this the passion to serve. And one of the ways we served was through singing. So we all sang. Honestly, I learned the guitar because that was something that girls enjoyed. And so
there we go.
I mean, I started to learn it because I was actually wanting to play the drums in Germany when we were stationed there. My dad was stationed there, but it just is one of those instruments. It's hard to do anything with. So I learned how to play the guitar, really incorporated that into worship in El Paso, and basically just learned, and they said, fake it till you make it. So I went on stage, wouldn't plug in, just play along with a skilled guitar player with the main service. And then I kind of developed the worship team for the youth. And then we ended up and, made 2 full teams. And then we had a youth, junior high and senior high team. And so just kind of helped to build that structure for them. And it just really was a passion and a strong desire of mine. But we've been singing since we were little. My parents have always wanted to do that.
Okay. So y'all met in El Paso. You date for a while. You get married there?
We did. We dated. Okay. I mean, it was like 14, 15.
Okay.
She broke up with me twice during that period.
There's a whole nother story.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's deep and it's dark.
Deep and dark stories here on the podcast.
But no, I mean, it was good. Yeah. So we dated, off and on for a couple of years, and then got married at 19. So.
And you knew you were going to go into the military at that point.
There was a desire in me to do something in the military, just because I have family goes all the way back to like the cavalry and on horseback, like riding, and they've served in the military. And so it's kind of a really cool ancestral kind of path that we can look at. So,
so how long were you in that? I mean, you obviously went to Turkey. Was there other, I guess, spots where they moved you around? Or
Dover, Delaware. So we went, first station was Turkey. We were there for 3 years. And then we went to Dover, Delaware. And then I was stationed at Kokomo, Indiana. And that was my last kind of like hoorah, is like Kokomo, Indiana.
Gotcha.
Got deployed and came back.
Okay. So, and that total was how many years?
8 years
of being in the military. Okay.
Yeah.
And so maybe let's just fast forward to that point. So like you're done with the military, or what's the conversation like then? Like, okay, now what? What are we doing?
Well, it happened when you were deployed. I think the conversation was brought up in your deployment. We were just saying, well, what if, because he had this GI Bill and he had always done music and kind of felt drawn to that. And so we just kind of asked, well, what if you did go to school? What would that look like? And he started a conversation with a Christian university.
Yeah, and it was difficult because I served at a church prior to getting deployed. And the pastor had told me that he wanted me to become the new worship pastor. Okay. And so then he retired. And the new guy said, well, you need a degree from the university before I'll hire you. And I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. And I was already bivocationally, I was kind of doing this job of youth pastor, worship pastor. Okay. And so it hurt a little bit because I'd already signed paperwork to get out of the military. Yeah. And then I switched that over to be like reserves. Okay. And so then I was deployed. And while I was deployed, I was serving as a worship leader at the chapel on base. And it was just incredible to watch different people who were literally changing every day. And it could be their last. And some of them it was. From like 1 week to the other, people were gone. Yeah. And they weren't gone because they were deployed to a different base. They were gone because they died. And it just, people throwing their hearts out to the Lord and unashamed worship. And it was the first time I'd seen that ever because they just kind of didn't have anything to lose. Yeah. So I had talked to Steph and I was, and there's a lot of really tough moments. You see people come to the altar and they're just submitting themselves to the Lord because of how broken they feel. And I said, I really feel like this is something I need to do for the rest of my life. I want to make this something I do. And so I kind of applied for Lincoln Christian University I looked at a couple of different ones, but that was the one that had housing for married people. And I already had a son at the time, John and Steph, and we were looking to grow even more. So we just needed that space to grow, and they were the ones that could provide that for us.
Okay. So you moved at that point
when we came back, I had been accepted and I actually started school. I didn't know anything about college. Okay. So we started in January. Okay. Which is not when
And where's that school at?
Lincoln, Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's in between Springfield and Bloomington.
Gotcha.
Illinois,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Like 3 hours south of
goes
Chicago.
Yeah. So, you're married, you got a kid. Were you anything with school at that point or just going with Josh to Illinois?
Yeah, I was just going with Josh to Illinois. Okay. And it really felt like a calling for both of us, I felt. Mm-hmm. And he felt this so strongly. And I think at that point we were praying. Yeah. We were asking God, okay, like, what do you, And just really, I think that's when we were learning to invite God into our life a lot more. And so it just kind of felt like the natural next step for us. Yeah. And so it was easy in that aspect because we felt like God was leading us.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're so confident, like it's God leading you, then it still takes faith, but it's like
it does.
You can kind of like rest your hat on that and say, like, I know this is happening.
Yes.
I'm going.
Yes.
That's
yes,
really cool.
Definitely.
So when you're in school, what was that experience like? What were maybe some takeaways of that? How long was it? A couple of years?
Yeah, it was 4 years, and I was actually in the military during part of that. Okay. So I didn't actually exit the reserves until 2012, and I started in January 2011. So April 2012 is when I got out of the military, and so I was kind of doing both of those, which was difficult.
And you're an adult. You're 25.
I was an adult, and I was working as a associate worship minister at a church part-time, and then code enforcement officer for the city. So I had 2 jobs. Wow. And on average took about 22 and a half hours a semester. And so it was just loaded because I had my major and my minor. And
Emma came along too.
Emma came along like that summer after my first semester, it was just
add a kid in
yeah,
there.
you know,
Yeah.
why not? So it was good though. I think it was also humbling because I went to school because I realized there was something missing from my worship leading experience. And a lot of that had to do with the education behind why I was playing what I was playing. And then also just, I don't know, learning music and knowing why it's a G or why it's a C or
just like general training.
yeah,
on
I mean,
music.
just normal stuff
Yeah.
that you would take for granted if you hadn't already done it. Then, you know, just being humbled by the talent and the amount of skill that was coming out of high school. I'm like 25
Yeah.
and I'm like, I've got experience, and my experience felt so little compared to some of these kids that are coming in and are so gifted. So it was a good time for me to really step back and say, God, what are you calling me to? And I became like kind of a leader for those students, the people that are coming with talent, but necessarily don't have any sort of, they didn't have maybe a father figure, or they didn't have any sort of spiritual leadership. So I became a small group guy, and a lot of them jumped into my group, and it was really neat. We made them home cooked meals because a lot of them were eating at the dining facility, which isn't the greatest.
So were you like one of the only married couples? Like, okay,
in the worship ministry.
Okay, and you're like, come over for cookies.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah, I mean, we make them steaks. I mean, we like it was like they were like, yeah, it was pretty cool. But God really formed our hearts in those moments and made us really depend on Him a lot more when you're working that many hours and you're doing that much school.
For sure.
And you're
it's
trying
amazing.
to spend time
I think
with each
what we
other.
accomplished, I feel like I accomplished something too, but it was such a busy, crazy time that 4 years, there was just so much going on. And it's just looking back, it's like, it was all God giving us that strength to like persevere and push through all that.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Especially in those little kid years, which I can relate to, trying to do all that you just said on that. That's a lot, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So you get out of school, you have a degree in, is it worship leading or
Worship
music?
ministry.
Worship ministry.
And minor in technology.
Okay. And then do you scour the country looking for a job? Like,
you're supposed to. I'm unique in the way that I went on a internship in Indiana with my old worship pastor, who is the head of the music department, IUPUI. And so he was also a worship pastor. But I went there, I learned a lot from him. And then I was asked by a friend who went to school to be a pastor if I wanted to plant a church with him in Madison, Wisconsin. We didn't know Madison at the time. In fact, Steph even said, as long as it's not north.
Any more north than we were. That was
like,
my one stipulation.
okay. I got to know about that. What is that? Why north?
Well, I'm from El Paso, Texas. It's desert. It's hot.
I see.
And I was at my like top. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I can't go any colder. Like I'm
You're
done.
like basically in Canada at this point.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It was for Illinois where we were was so frigid.
Okay.
It was horrible.
I've never lived like up there. I lived in like northern Washington, like when I went to school in British Columbia for a little bit, and that was cold, but it wasn't like that like crazy snow and like any of that stuff, which I'm sure
it was the wind. We were surrounded by cornfields, so there was nothing to break you from this crazy wind.
No, it was like negative 30 wind chill. And it was crazy.
Okay.
It was cold.
So you don't want to go north, but you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
We prayed about it.
Yeah.
We definitely prayed about it. But God just kind of opened this door for us to go with this wonderful couple. I mean, he's my best friend. And we went there to plant this church and bivocational working.
Yeah.
So I worked at Social Security.
So your buddy, what was your friend's name?
David.
So David is like the preaching guy?
Yeah.
And you're the music guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we go there, we kind of start this launch or start the preparations for a launch. And then part of the way through, he and I both kind of come to this understanding, like maybe with where we are as a family, this isn't the best thing for us to do together. And so we step away from the church plant. And then I go into this weird stage of serving again on different worship teams.
Okay.
Some of it's paid, some of it's not, and start searching for a job, a worship ministry job, because I know I want to do it. And while doing that, we go on a soccer tournament tour in Chicago and and go to this church and get connected. And I loved the worship. I loved the liturgy of the service. And so I was like, wow, this is everything that I've been looking for when it comes to the liturgy of the service. I was listening to it. I was watching this. I was listening to songs, the words, everything in between. I was like, wow, they're just setting up and going to the service. It's so well done. How do I get into this? And so that was the start of my next kind of church planting launch. So and that was another Dave.
Different Dave.
Dave Jacobson.
Okay.
And he's awesome guy, dynamic preacher. Met with him, and he said, I'd like to try you out as a worship leader for us. We've got a core team already of 60 people. He was super organized. Everything kind of lined up with what we believed. And we launched into what is now known as City on a Hill Church.
Okay, in Chicago.
No, this is actually in Madison. So we went back to Madison. They connected me with Dave in Madison, and they're like, hey, we've got this guy who's going to plant in Madison. And just a really cool God kind of saying, hey, I'm not done with you yet here. And so we launched
trying really hard to get out of there.
We were. Yeah. It was like, okay.
Maybe I was, but I was like, let's go.
Right.
But God kind of broke our hearts into this new idea of staying there, still being bivocational, which was not ideal for me or her.
And a church plan again. Like church planning is so difficult.
Yeah.
I was like,
she was done.
Oh, I was like, no,
not this again.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this.
Back to back.
But it was one of the best things I think we've ever done. I think there was so much growth. It was very hard, but I think we really grew during that time.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting contrast.
Yeah. How long was that season?
So we launched in 2017, September 2017. And so we had our trial service, because that's how they do things. We had the whole portable church thing, set everything up, make sure we can get everything set up and tear down in Madison, Wisconsin in September. So everything is cold, but going to get colder. And so we did our initial launch. And I just remember the first Sunday, I was up there in a pair of like athletic shorts and athletic shirts soaked in sweat because of all the running around.
Oh yeah.
It was just so much work. And then we hadn't figured everything out yet. So that was good, but it lasted for us. We were in that school for only like a year, year and a half until we got a building.
Okay.
Which is pretty unheard of for church plants.
Yeah.
So
bought a Methodist church for like $800,000 and the church was all in, and we had 130 members and just able to kind of go into that. And during that period, right before that period hit, I actually stepped out of the worship leader position and went into a different position, still helping with worship. And they brought a different guy in to kind of help do that. His salary that he needed was less, but he also had skill sets to do things like on that back end that I didn't have. And he was a great worship leader. I think he did a great job. And so he could also play electric really, really well, play drums really, really well. So he had some skill sets that I just didn't have, which were really, really helpful for growing the church. But then we kind of got to a point where God said, we want you to foster. And so we accepted that opportunity, but that also meant she needed to stop working because of the medical needs of this child. And so I had to take a different job other than Social Security, which required me to be present more. And so I ended up stepping away from the church plant and joined this company. And this company then, the two of the three owners said, we want to move to Nashville and start a new company. Do you want to come with us? And I was like, shoot. I'm going to pray about it before I tell Steph, because that's south, and I know she's going to want to go.
Closer to El Paso.
yes.
So,
okay.
But, God opened the door, and we just felt such peace about it. And then, inside of that, there was a lot of intense things happening between those owners and the other owner, because they were related. And we even said, me physically, I said, listen, if I'm going down there and this doesn't become super profitable for me, as long as I'm able to go and walk through this with that couple, that's what God has called us to. And so, and what it turned out is like, that's what it was. Like, it wasn't super
really
profitable.
Yeah.
We, used up all of our savings, to live off of. And then, God kind of moved us away from that company after about 1.5 years, 2 years. And now I'm working in a different place, but still serving. And I think the only reason why that worked so well is our time at fellowship and the way that God has kind of ministered to us in this time of rest. I call it a season of rest because you're not on staff at a church and working another job. And so for us, it feels like a season of rest, and God has done a really good work in us. So
maybe that's one of like the low hanging fruit questions is like, do you miss leading worship, vocationally at a church, especially having gone to school, for that, and you saying the first one didn't work, I want to do it again. And just that the draw on you, or the fire in you to do that. What's that been like, not having a job that is music and church related, but serving instead, volunteering? Yeah,
I feel as though there are times where I really, really miss it. I miss, because I do have a passion for it, a strong desire for it. And I do get to lead at fellowship, every once in a while. I get to lead some songs. And but I've also really grown to understand that we are leaders no matter what position we hold on the stage. And so if I'm just helping one person kind of see Christ and come to his throne in an act of worship, singing worship, then I feel like I'm doing what I'm called. But I do miss it. I think anybody who's drawn to this this ministry, it's hard to step away and not miss the ministry, because that's something you've always felt that way. I've been doing it since I was little. So I do miss it, but I think that it's just a season of life that God has us in.
Yeah. So Steph, I mean, for you, what is it like for you to sing at a church? Like, why, we sometimes we'll do auditions now when people come in and sing. And that's one of the questions we've started asking is like, why is it important for you to sing in church? Like, you can sing anywhere, or you could sing at home, or you could not sing at all. Like, why is that a drive for you?
I think it's important. I feel like in my journey and what I've learned is, for me personally, I feel like God gives you a gift. And you can choose, and I feel like sometimes he leads you in a certain way, and you can do this and you can do that. And whatever his plan is for you, he kind of lays it out for you. But I think for me specifically, God kind of just put me on this path just because Josh was a worship leader as well. And it's something that it's easy to be on stage and to sing. But something that I really had to learn is, and I know it sounds like weird, but it's like, who are you really doing this for? And that has been a process. It's such an important role. And I mean, important not to be standing on stage, but I think just to be authentic and to really allow God to use you in that moment, and whatever it looks like, because it's not always perfection. Sometimes it's just, maybe it's showing emotion or raising your hands and just being fully worshiping. And so I feel like it's just something that I've learned, and I'm still continuing to learn, is that being on stage, it's an important role, but not because you're on stage, but just because.
No, that's really
just
well
because
said.
you're just leading worship, and you want to be that authentic person to the other people, and you don't want to be a distraction. And it just doesn't make sense if it's about you being on there.
100%. Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah. I think there is something too about the quality being out of proportion to where it needs to be. Like, we've talked about that before on the podcast too, about like professional worship leading, like what a phrase that is, or like, I mean, it kind of is in the category of like celebrity pastor, where it's like, oh, that person's so good at preaching because they're so slick and they've got all the points down. And it's like, there's something inside of me that kind of like cringes a little bit when that happens, or sometimes I'll hear like, oh, the worship was so good today. Oh, the harmonies were perfect and nobody messed up. And like, it was just sounded like a recording.
I wasn't on that.
That wasn't the team.
Probably not me either. Yeah. So, there's like a little bit of like a head tilt when I hear that kind of stuff, because it feels like, you're saying everything but worship, like it's just like, well, I know the sound was perfect and the singing was really good. And like, it kind of goes into like evaluating, worship is always really hard. And like, whether it was successful or not in the room. And I love the way that you said it. It's like, I'm on stage not for the sake of being on stage, which is like, that would be everyone else, like that tours and makes records is like, they want to be on stage. They want to be famous. Like that's the end goal of that, So like, it's always been a very interesting role for me to sit in, where it's like, who's on the team? Why are they on the team? Wanting to make sure that we're all on the same page together. Like I've been noticing that the longer I've been doing it, is the health of a team. And making sure the team is all on the same page,
that's right.
Because if you've got people moving in different directions or for different reasons, it's hard to like lock arms and like lead together, and so I think that's what I was alluding to before about you guys being rock stars. That's probably not a good word choice.
Blowing our heads up.
But it's actually more, people that I look across the platform at and say, I can lock arms with these people. Like I'm in lockstep with them, because of how we think about worship and how where I know you guys' heads are at, you know what I mean? The one thing too, and this is not to like point a spotlight at you guys at all, which I have wanted to say this on here too, is like the leading of the people from the seats. I have seen you guys do that so well, and not on purpose. You're not doing it so that you can be seen. But I just see like you guys are always up front, and always just, I think from song one, and, I know this is about my wife too, Shelly, like she loves singing, loves the music. And so she just walks in the room and is ready to go. And I see that helping other people. Like they're like, oh yeah, like, it's almost like a reminder, like we might do a call to worship to remind someone, hey, remember we're here to worship. Remember we're here to meet with God. I see people, and it's people throughout the room, kind of saying, hey, song one, let's go. Hands are up, singing loud, like that whole thing. And that can't be overstated. Like that is leading worship. You're helping lead your fellow congregants, saying like, hey, remember how good God is? Like, remember how much he loves us? Like we have a lot to sing about, So, I mean, thank you for that kind of leadership. I know it's not on purpose. You're doing it because you want to worship, and that's the best part of it.
It's like uncaged, uncaged worship. Cause like at that point you're able to just follow your passion and desire for worshiping Christ. And I mean, so just to kind of put it out there is that we tend to try to make sure that we're not distractions on stage more so than anything else. We want to lead people, but and I don't come from a charismatic background at all. So you're not going to see me jump and kick and do all sorts of crazy things on stage, but I come from a place of kind of a pulled back worship. And we feel in the leadership and the way that we have experienced worship here at this church, kind of this unashamed, you're not going to be judged for raising your hands. You're not going to be judged for clapping because something is worth clapping for. And I feel like that's something that has been fostered in the church here, which is really, really cool. And it just has allowed us to express the way we feel God is leading us to express. And so it's been really, really fun and a great experience to be in the congregation each and every week. And also, there's one family in particular who sits behind us sometimes, and they're just as energetic and going after it as us. And it's just like, it's almost like kind of hyping each other up because like, man, let's go. God is doing something right now.
You're like almost testifying to each other. Like, that's right. He is good. Like, I just love that so much.
Yeah, it's been really cool.
So here's a question. I'm like springing this question on you guys, but it's something that I have been thinking more about too, in terms of like where my head's at while we're leading worship, And so like my role a lot of times is like details, right? Like I'm music directing, like I'm thinking of the worship leader. Where do they want to go? I'm like thinking, where have we planned, to go with the tracks and the charts and like all the function of making it, work. Right. And so I just wanted to ask that, to you guys, like, where is your head at when you're on stage leading worship? Or like another way of asking that might be like, is there like a thought that you go to, or is there like something that puts you in a headspace of like, like lately I've been imagining like sitting in front of like the throne, and like just looking up and like singing, and like that puts me in a different headspace than thinking like I'm on stage in Brentwood and I'm holding an electric guitar. Like it's like if I can get out of there, I'm able to like worship, and like almost just like access, the throne room of God in that moment rather than like the mechanics. Does that make sense? It's kind of like a roundabout way. Yeah. But either of you or both of you have a thought on that? Yeah.
Well, I think, do you mean being on stage or just?
Yeah, while you're singing, like, is there a thought that puts you in a state of gratitude or of worship or of, honor?
I think my picture that I've had for a really long time is picturing just God on his throne. And I don't necessarily have a face there, but just God on his throne. And I'm kind of there. And sometimes I'm bringing something to him, like on a tray, and I'm bowed down. Or sometimes I just picture myself just worshiping him like freely. And it's kind of a general picture, but I can see it really well in my head, but it's kind of hard to describe. And it's just a lot of light and it's really bright there. And
is that something that you need to actively think, okay, Steph, think about that? Or is it just kind of in the moment you naturally go to?
I think it's different. Okay. It kind of depends maybe on the moment. I think sometimes I have to make myself go there.
Okay.
I think it's easy being a singer to get stuck on what you're singing.
Yeah. Okay.
So I feel like sometimes mentally I have to just put myself there.
Yeah.
Versus when there's different times where you're feeling something, and maybe if we're like struggling, or it's just like you just really need to be in the presence of God, then it kind of just happens more naturally. But I feel like it kind of just depends where I am on Sunday.
That's interesting. Mentally. I've never thought about like, we always talk about distractions from stage. We don't want to distract people. That's like one of our highest goals. Like as we plan services, it's like we want people to stay in the moment, so they're not thinking about a light that just changed or something that was super awkward on stage,
Yeah.
But we can also be a distraction in our own heads. Like, like
totally.
If I'm not much of a singer, but like if I'm trying to sing background harmonies or do something, all of a sudden, like I can find myself focused on that and like make sure I hit the right note and I'm staying up here on the harmony. And I'm like, my brain is like there, and so there's something to be said about like really clearing that out. And just say, hey, like, yes, we have prepared all this stuff. Yes, we're ready. But like, I'm here for like your glory alone. Yeah. Like, I just want to lift up your name. I just want to praise you right now.
Yeah.
And really that's what I want for the people in the seats as well. Like I want them to be able to imagine a throne room or see Jesus, the Son of God, right in front of them. And like that, I mean, we talk about revelation response. Like that's the seeing Jesus for who he is, like remembering even like Jesus on a cross, like when we get to Good Friday stuff, that's just like, he's up there bleeding for me, looking at me. And I'm just like, thank you, God. Like that's different than like just singing the right lyrics and playing the right chords. You know
Definitely.
what I mean? So,
yeah. And I also have a little prayer that I say before, especially on stage, because I feel like it's more easily for me to be distracted on stage. And I just kind of say like, it's very simple. I'm just like, God, whatever I give to you today, like, it's yours, whatever it is. And I have to do that because I used to get so hung up when I messed up. And I used to, for years, like I would turn red and it would like mess me up in the moment. And so something
like you could fixate on it or like not get past it. Yeah.
And, but God is just so loving and caring just to kind of walk through that with me and to remind me, I think you forgot it's not about you. And that's what it was. I was thinking about myself, my embarrassment or whatever. And he's like, whatever you give to me, just like just give it all. I don't want your perfection, and I'm not a perfect person, so it's never perfect. Thank God that he likes that.
This is what I bring. Yeah, I can only bring this. Yeah.
I literally always mess up, but being okay with it and being like, this is yours, whatever it is, and so that's kind of something I tell myself.
Okay. The question I asked you, if I asked myself that, it has to be intentional. Like, I don't think that I just naturally go there. I wish I would.
Totally.
But it's something that I have to, even a couple times, maybe over 20 minutes, say,
definitely.
Hey, where are you at now? Now, where are you at?
Yeah.
Like, are you still in the moment? Are you still like encountering Jesus, like, and we say that a lot, like we can't lead others where we ourselves have not gone,
Right.
so we're saying, hey, worship his name, lift up his, but it's like, if we are honest with ourselves, like, are we worshiping right now? Like, or are we just performing or helping others worship, but not doing it ourselves? It's a total different thing.
And again, I know you guys are so intentional when picking out songs and sets. And so knowing the liturgy has been prayed over and that the songs and the sets have been prayed over, for me, the mind space starts when I practice. And so each week I'm pulling out the songs, I'm kind of working through it. And the words are just ministering to me in those practices and those like mini rehearsals between me and God.
That's cool.
And Steph will come in every once in a while when I'm practicing in the room. I'm just walking around the room with my eyes closed, just worshiping God. And I think when I get to Sunday morning, I'm in a place where I'm just so excited about what God is saying through these songs, and then knowing that it's true, knowing the truth that comes from that, and just like the brokenness that I've come out of because of a song that we're singing, and how we know that God is bringing us out of those brokenness. And so it's really cool. And then I'll look around and I'll find people that you can just tell they're leading you in worship. They're down there and they're helping you. You may be playing the song, you may be singing the words, but that person in the congregation is helping kind of take you to the throne as well. And so it's a mutual relationship that's happening between the people that are on stage playing the music and the people that are in the crowd. And it's almost effortlessly happening because, we've got these people on stage that some of them are on tour up until Saturday night. And so they come and play with us on Sunday morning. And you're like, he could probably like cover everything I'm doing right now on the drums. And so I don't have to worry and stress and focus like I used to on carrying the team. Everybody's there to lead worship, and everybody came prepared. And so the mindset for me at that point is just like, God, what are you doing right now? And how are you affected? And I think, between you and Luke and Lindsay and Carl, you guys do such a good job at kind of pointing that out on Sunday morning before we start, just kind of redirecting us and helping us to come in with our minds clear and ready to engage in worship. So
that's awesome.
It's been fun.
I just love the music too. Like on Sunday morning, you can go through your whole week. And if you're like struggling with something or whatever, there's something about singing that helps you to believe what you need to believe. And I think those are the moments that are so amazing. And that's why it's so awesome to be together, because I feel like we're literally encouraging each other. Like one song that always comes to me is Surgeon. Run to
the Father.
Run to the Father. That's one that always gets me. It just kind of reminded me to how much we need God. And I just feel like we think it and we know it, but sometimes we just need that song to help us like kind of bring it to our heart and really believe.
There's a truth that becomes even stronger when I see like hundreds of people singing. As opposed to like if I'm just in my car singing Run to the Father, like that can be a moment between me and God. But like I'm so encouraged by like sitting in front of our whole church and just watching everyone and like you said, Josh, like just watching someone, like we did baptisms 2 weeks ago. And just looking out at the singing after the baptism, and everyone's like wiping their eyes and just and it's like not like an emotionalism thing as much as it is like
a belief.
That lyric just changed their life. Like they're saying like, as a result of watching this baptism, I can barely get through the song because of how much like I'm grateful for God. And so like it's hard it would be hard to look out at that and be like, that does nothing for me. You know, like it doesn't move me at all. Like it's the opposite. You know, like it moves me to like tears, you know? Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the powerful things about worshiping as a community, you know, and having to be together to get that. You can't get that in isolation.
Absolutely.
So here's another, maybe this is like another like left turn, you know, but like you guys, and we didn't really talk about this before we hit record, but like when you guys were talking about fostering, I mean, we're kind of both there right now. Like I haven't talked about that at all on the podcast, but like we're waiting for placement now, you know, and looking at fostering and adopting and all that. And so maybe like as a way of sort of getting to that, I always like to get to what is God speaking to you right now? Like, where are you at? And response, I mean, I think I can speak for us a little bit. Like, that's been a hard response because you feel like, okay, God has this for us. Like, we want to help kids. Like, we want to be faithful, you know, with the family we've been given. We want to be family for this next kid, you know?
Yeah.
And we want to provide that until it's right in front of you. You know? And then it's like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, right now. Would you like to right now?
Right now, are you sure?
It's 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 like where the obedience, like the rubber meets the road, you know? And so if it's not too much, I mean, just to ask you guys, like, where are you at today, you know, with your process, or maybe like what have you felt like God has been saying to you specifically in the process of like inviting another kid into your house, like, and what's been your response to that?
We have been praying about adoption for a while now, probably 9-10 years. After Emma was born, we knew that I shouldn't have another one biologically. Adoption has been a part of my family. My dad was adopted. So it was kind of an easy, like, oh, well, we'll just adopt, you know, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
And, but I think what has been hard is the timing. Like I wanted to adopt a long time ago. And, you know, it was a process, just like working on both of our hearts. So I feel like now that we're waiting for a placement, like we're just like, come on, you know, any day now we're just waiting for something. But I feel like what he's taught me through this adoption process is to trust his process. And even when something's good, right? Like adoption is good. Why didn't it happen, you know, back then when our kids were a little bit younger and blah, blah, blah. But he's just like, just trust me. Yeah. And I feel like that's something he's kind of been telling us, I think, through our whole life is just trust me, trust my timing. You know, and it's going to work out. Just
and it will.
You know?
It will.
Yeah.
I mean,
it totally will.
He just kind of like laid it out for us. I mean, it wasn't even in our minds. I mean, it was kind of there, but kind of a turning point because I had been the one to kind of pull back the reins a little bit, saying, okay, this isn't the right time when we moved here with the whole business launch and just income and resources and just everything else. It just didn't seem right, like the right timing. And Steph actually told me, she's like, I'm mourning this, like it's over.
Yeah.
And
a year ago I said that.
And I said,
I was like, I feel like God's closing this door.
Yeah. And I said, no, I just think he's saying not right now. And so not no, just not yet. And so, you know, Roe v. Wade overturning kind of opened this spot in my heart and just said, okay, God, we've been praying for this. We've been praying for this overturning, but like, what are you what's our call now? How are we going to respond? And so our response to that is to then accept responsibility. And so our responsibility is now to take on one of those children that maybe wouldn't have had an opportunity to live. And so we kind of prayed more, and then God just started opening doors of opportunity and moving things through very quickly. I mean, quicker than we could have ever imagined. We started the process, and I think within 3 or 4 weeks, our home study was done, our paperwork was finished, and we were just at that point waiting for the agency that we're going through to accept us as adoptive parents. And so very quick. And then fellowship, I mean, we went to a luncheon that we thought was just like a luncheon to give information on fostering adoption, and it wasn't. It was for people who had been fostering or adopted. Okay. And then Marty was like, kind of telling us like, oh, the church helps you to adopt, and this is how we can financially help you. And we also have all these programs. And we're like, wow, God, like, this is not something we knew was available.
Yeah.
And that was another thing financially. We just didn't know if it was possible, but we were going to answer that call anyways.
Yeah.
And then that just opened the door to move very quickly into this kind of process. And God has just moved it. I mean, just kept moving it and answering when we say, is this really what we're supposed to be doing? Is this really what we should be doing? Answering it with a sound yes. And he doesn't always do that. But in this case, he has.
Yeah.
And we feel complete peace.
Yeah.
And Emma's been praying for it. Emma's been praying. Our youngest has been praying for like 6 years.
Yeah.
She's wanted
Faithfully.
a baby sister. We don't know which one we're going to get, but she's been praying for a baby sister. So that may be in our future. But God is just, I don't know, he's just been kind of taking the reins and running it. And we've just been open-handed saying, whenever and whatever God you want for us, we'll take.
Yeah.
So
I think for me personally, going through the process, it's been like, I'm so good at saying yes and being obedient when it's like really easy.
Yes, me too.
And just like, look at, I just said yes to that. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like, and so all of a sudden, like, I feel this like, whoa, this one takes a lot of faith for me. Like, this is actually a very hard jump for me to make. And it's like, I'm trying to be grateful for that, instead of like resisting it, and saying like, this is good. Like, I need to be on the edge of what I'm comfortable with, so that I know it's God, like doing it. Like, this is not going to be easy, and it's not going to be like a gimme, and I'm used to like being safe and secure in those responses. And so and this is just me speaking, like, I feel I'm on the cusp of something that I'm not comfortable with.
Okay.
And that's good.
Yeah.
Like, this is a response that takes a little bit of like pain or like resistance to get through, so like that's just Shelly and I talking through it. And she's much more like, let's do this today. Like, she's like stoked out of her mind, which is, I need that from her, like to pull me in that direction, say, it's going to be okay. Like, God's got this, like, he's going to provide a way. Yeah. So I'm excited for you guys.
Awesome.
Turns out we're going to be very close neighbors sometime
very soon. Yeah.
So excited to walk through that kind of with you guys, and we'll see. There's a couple other fellowship families doing it too, but just to see what God has for our families and growing that way.
It is exciting, and we know that, like, again, doing this with fellowship is a big deal for us. Yeah. It's kind of weird. It's a family, and we've sensed that since we moved here, and it's just felt very welcoming. Love and the care that's given there is just amazing for us. And so I think that's another part of why God has kind of said, this is your time. Yeah. And I wanted to give this to you now because I knew that now you would have the support, the love, the care around you. Yeah. And so it's just a really, really cool thing to see from the outside looking in, at fellowship. Yeah. It's just a really neat thing. And I think that's why God kind of opened it. And, the timing, perfect timing, trusting his process and his perfect timing. So I think that was another big part of it. So
that's amazing. Well, I'll be praying for you guys as that continues to progress.
Same.
It'll be mutual.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you guys just coming on today and talking about your story. It's like, we've been friends for a few years now, but it's still like, I'm like learning brand new things about your story and kind of how you got to where you are today. Yeah. And it's always just nice to hear like a story of like God's faithfulness, like just throughout we're here, and then he moved us here, and then we're in this other country, and now we're back, and it's just like one of those stories where it's like, what's he going to do next, you know? And so, and it's not done yet, like you're still obviously right in the middle of something God's doing with your family. So awesome. Cool. Well, we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Revelation Response is produced by Fellowship Bible Church and Fellowship Songs. You can check us out online at fellowshipbiblechurch.org or by searching Fellowship Songs wherever you stream your music. Also, please leave us a like and give us a follow to hear more episodes like this. Thanks for listening.